If you're not using the command line, you're limiting your future as a developer. One of the scariest and the most avoided tools in the developer tool belt is the command line interface. However, this is also one of the most powerful tools you could possibly learn as a developer. Even as the graphical user interface tools become more and more prevalent and more useful, learning the command line is going to make you a better developer long term, and it's going to make you more efficient, and frankly, it's going to make you more valuable to companies. Today, we're going to look at 3 reasons why you should learn and love the command line interface. And as a bonus, if you stick around to the end, I'll share one more that kind of trumps all 3 of them. Hey, Junior Devs, Dev Mentor Dave here, helping you bridge the gap from learning to code to launching a successful career. Do you currently use the command line interface? If you do, leave a note below in the comments section and let me know whether you like using it, whether you don't like using it. Maybe let me know what you're using it for. I'd love to kind of see what that looks like as far as everybody watching this video, if they're familiar with the command line interface or if they're not familiar with it, or if you want to learn more about it. Before we jump into this discussion, we should probably answer the question, what exactly is the command line interface? Well, basically, it's a text-based interface. It's a text-based way of interacting with a computer or a software or some other system of some kind. In fact, this used to be the main way that we interacted with computers. If you go back and look at the earlier computers, well, maybe after punch cards, you would actually go to a terminal and you would type in the commands. So you would write a single line command telling the computer or telling the software what you wanted it to do, the command that you wanted it to run. Hence the term command line interface. We're typing commands into the interface to tell it what to do. In fact, just a few years ago, before I started working as a developer, I worked for a company that was still using command line interface tools to do the jobs that they were doing, taking phone calls and interacting with customers' information. So this is something that really has been going on for a long time and isn't going away anytime soon. So let's talk about why it's not going away and why learning the command line and really falling in love with the command line is going to make you a better developer. As I was thinking about this first point, I kept coming back to the illustration of the Lord of the Rings, and I'm a bit of a geek, and hopefully you are too, and you'll follow me on this illustration. But in Lord of the Rings, we know that Sauron, the big evil bad guy, gave rings of power to elves and to humans and to dwarves, but he had one ring that was really endued with his own power himself, and it was created to control all those other rings. It was the one ring to rule them all. And really, when I think about the command line interface, it's kind of like the one ring to rule them all. See, the beauty of the command line interface, and one of the reasons why you should learn and love the command line interface, is that it has a broad application. See, we use the command line interface to interact with operating systems. You can use it to navigate through file systems. You can use it to create files. You can use it to edit files. You can interact with operating systems kind of like you do with a graphical user interface, but you can do it all from the command line as well. Not only that, but you can use the command line to interact with coding languages. You can run specific Node or PHP or Java processes, and you can interact with those languages and interact with the files from those languages and run them and do all these different things when you don't have to use a graphical interface. Plus, it also interacts with third-party applications, either on your computer or on your network, or it can interact with third-party applications and services outside in a remote setting, such as AWS or GitHub or something like that. So learning the command line and loving the command line gives you access to a much broader range of power and things that you can do where you may not have access to all those things if you're just relying on the graphical user interface. So how else can the command line help us? Well, many of you know I'm a lead developer at the company that I work for right now. And as a lead developer, sometimes we're given access to certain systems or certain information, and that's so that we can manage things that maybe others on our team are not given access to, or they're not They're not allowed to interact with those things, just to make sure that we're keeping everything as secure as possible, to make sure that people don't have access to things that they don't need to interact with, so that there's no accidents along the way. And one of the beautiful things about learning the command line is a lot of times that opens up the opportunity for you to have access to other things that other people don't have access to. See, one thing about the command line is a lot of languages will give you documentation for the things you can do with command line. And even if they provide a graphical interface, a lot of times those graphical interfaces don't do everything that's possible that you can do from the command line. In fact, sometimes they even do some of the things that they can do from the command line poorly, or not as well, not as efficiently. So one of the great things about learning the command line interface is you often have access to more tools and more options inside the command line than you do in the graphical user interface. Another benefit of using the command line is sometimes you get access to better error messages, or more verbose error messages that are maybe more helpful than what you get back from a graphical user interface, whether that's a web application or whether that's an application on your desktop. Sometimes those error messages are very generic, but sometimes if you get down into the command line and you're running some of those commands on your own, physically inputting those commands into the command line, sometimes you can get better error responses, better messages coming back to help you figure out or diagnose what the situation is that you need to fix. So not only does the command line give you broader access to options in a language or an operating system, not only does it give you access sometimes to better error messages, but sometimes it just gives you better access to more systems. So the reality is that things like web servers and other third-party tools, especially remote tools, oftentimes really only want you connecting via the command line. They want you to only interact with that server via the command line. Now, sometimes they do have some graphical user interfaces to do some things, to manage some things on a server. But honestly, if you really want to have the power and the ability to really do everything that you want to do, you're going to have to learn the command line. So learning and loving the command line gives us a broader application. It gives us a broader access. And one more thing, one of the most annoying things about development is the reality that sometimes you end up doing the same thing over and over and over again. And really, we don't like to do that. We like to learn new things. We like to add new skills to our skill set. We like to build cool stuff and fresh stuff. But the reality is, even when you're building new things, there's a lot of pieces of building that new application or building that new website that are pretty much going to be the same every single time. And as developers, one of the things that we like to do and that we should do is try to automate as much of that process as we can, try to become more efficient in getting some of those mundane things done. That's why we have things like templates and boilerplates and things like that that'll help us kind of get started and do some of those things that we need to do, but we don't really necessarily want to do all the time. But it allows us to do it more efficiently, to do it faster, and not have to worry about typing the same thing over and over and over again on every single process. Well, one of the beautiful things about the command line is this takes our efficiency to the next level in several different ways. The first way is that often using the command line to do some of your processes will save a lot of the resources of your computer. See, one of the things that happens with a graphical user interface is it uses more resources. It uses more CPU resources. It uses more graphics resources. It uses more memory resources. So when you can cut out that graphical user interface and just work with the command line, that saves some of the power of your computer from being spent on just making things easier for you to read. Another way that it makes it more efficient is you can actually write command line scripts that you can run and do multiple things at one time. You can write a script to navigate down to certain folders and to do something with the files in that folder, whether it's delete them or copy them or run them or all kinds of different things that you can do with the command line. You can create scripts that'll kind of automate whole processes that you would have to sit there and manually do, or that you might often have to go through and manually do through a graphic user interface that maybe they haven't taken the time to set up that process, or maybe it's a custom process that you want to do that may not be part of a graphical user interface or the way that somebody else thought of using that system. You can write scripts in order to automate a lot of that process. And when it comes to that automation, you can actually set it up to where that runs efficiently at specific times of day, such as using cron jobs or something like that. So you can actually take your efficiency to a much higher level to where you've got stuff working that you would need to do normally when you're in bed or when you're asleep or when you're working on something else. You can set up all of these different aspects of scripting and automation for efficiency, whereas you might not be able to do that with a graphical user interface. So as you're on your journey to become a junior developer, I really want to encourage you, take the time to learn and fall in love with the command line interface, because it's only going to make you a better developer, not just now as you're learning to be a junior developer, but for years and years and years to come, because there's a whole wide world out there that deals mostly with the command line interface. Things like DevOps, they work with the command line interface all the times. There's lots of frameworks that use the command line interface. I work with Laravel right now, and there's some awesome commands that allow you to create some of those boilerplate files with specific commands, and you don't have to go through and copy paste or duplicate or write the files all on your own. So learning the command line gives you access to so much more that you can be doing as a developer. So learn the command line interface, fall in love with the command line interface, and become a command line interface dev. Okay, you've stuck with me this far, so I'll give you one more bonus that I think trumps all three of those great reasons why you should learn and love the command line interface, and that is this: it just looks cool. I remember the first time that I saw The Matrix and watching the guy sit in the chair with all of those different screens, and they had all that green scrolling text, and they thought they were talking about how they could look at it and they kind of recognize things, you know, that they would see kind of patterns in the system and things like that. And let's just be honest. If you have a black screen and green text on it, you're just a cool dev. You're just cool. I know there's lots of different options for your terminal, but I'll be honest with you, I can't get past the black screen with the green text. So if you're a command line interface developer, you're just cooler than everybody else. Hey, if you're finding this information helpful, I'd appreciate it if you would click the like button. It just helps YouTube know that other people might be interested in this information. Of course, if you're not subscribed and you find this information helpful, please click the subscribe button. We're trying to reach 5,000 subscribers here in the year of 2024. So I would appreciate it if you would jump on board and help us out with that as well. If you're just starting out on your journey to become a junior developer, maybe you haven't even started taking any coding lessons or anything like that, let me encourage you to check out this playlist right here, because this playlist is specifically designed for you. It's a list that we're currently adding videos to every week on Wednesday and Friday. And this is just taking you through from the very beginning, through the process of evaluating, how do I get into this world of development? What do I need to know before I make certain decisions about what direction I want to go in this world of development? So hopefully that'll be a real help to you, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next video.